Today we're starting the Refugee Awareness Week, and that's an important week for raising awareness for refugees every single year. And we're very, very honoured and delighted to be joined by Gulwali Passarlay, who is the author of a wonderful book called The Lightless Sky, which is an experience of his when he travelled all the way from Afghanistan to the UK, which took him over a year, at just 12 years old. So the book is about his personal experience, but since Gulwali came to the UK, he's had a tremendous journey even from there as well, which has led to him doing some amazing things. And he now campaigns and talks on the topic of refugee plight as well. So first of all, I'd just like to say hello and welcome to Gulwali.
Thank you, Sarah. It's good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. We're also joined by Noushin Raja, who is the founder of the Moonlight Trust. And the Moonlight Trust is a refugee charity that started several years ago. And Noushin has been doing this, and I'll let her explain a little bit about the start of the organisation. But the organisation works internationally and domestically with people that need sort of access to basic human needs, food, water, aid, and that is refugees and asylum seekers, but it's also people in the UK that have been struggling through the likes of the COVID pandemic. So Noushin, would you like to say hello and just give us a brief overview of the charity?
Hi guys, my name is Noushin, and as many of you, I just need to share the screen. So as many of you have already kind of known and met me, Moonlight Trust is a charity that I founded in memory of my brother Moon. So it started on a very personal and tragic circumstances, and I personally feel connected to refugees because all the refugees that I visited in camps, one or every single person had someone murdered in their family. So I had a personal connection to the cause. We do a lot of work, but our refugee work is very specific and heavy-handed, and 60% of the Moonlight Trust is actually supporting the refugees in camps and at home with basic supplies in Greece, in Turkey, in Bangladesh, in Serbia, Bosnia, France, and Afghan refugees in Pakistan. So what we do is supply from baby milk to nappies to emergency aid, to also support in terms of integration, employability, things like sewing machine classes. And we also campaign and raise awareness. In UK, we've done over 500 talks, and 5,000 people have joined our campaign United with Refugees, including Lord Dubs and some influential figures like MPs from cross parties. And one of the things we try to do is, as well as trying to help people on the ground, to also raise awareness. And I'm honored, and I couldn't be happier. Gulwali is one of my heroes, I'm not exaggerating, who became then ambassador for Moonlight Trust. And inshallah, this is the whole idea, that we continue for the campaigning, for raising awareness, and how we can give a hand to our brothers and sisters in need. So I'll just I hope that answered your question. You're muted.
Thank you so much, Noushin. That was a great overview. And throughout the meeting today, throughout this talk, I'll be asking questions to both Gulwali and Noushin about the current refugee situation, but also about their personal experiences along the way. And as we said, this is all about raising awareness. And sometimes that's also about giving the human and personal touch to something where we often just see headlines and statistics. So without further ado, let's get stuck in and find out a little bit more about Gulwali and his book, The Lightless Sky. Gulwali, could you give us just a 1 or 2 minute brief overview about your story, The Lightless Sky, and kind of how that came about and what made you write that?
Great. So The Lightless Sky came about in 2015. When I started Manchester University, I did a TEDx talk back in 2014, and then somebody saw it in the States and thought this was an interesting story. And she said, she could help me write a book about it. And I said, why not? I always take on opportunities whenever I get a chance. So then we wrote the book, and the book is about my childhood in Afghanistan, growing up in a kind of a conservative household. My father was a doctor. I had members of my family who were quite political. I spent most of my time living in the mountains as a shepherd a very nomadic life with my grandparents. So I wanted the book to be a whole, because in 2015, at the peak of the refugee crisis in Europe, I wanted to give a holistic details of why people become refugees. Why was I forced to flee alongside my brother at a very young age because of the conflict and war in Afghanistan, and what happens on the journey, the smuggling, the trafficking, the inhumane treatment by authorities, and the imprisonment, deportation, crossing the Mediterranean, and spending time in parks, and sleeping in basements, and being relying on strangers for food and survivals and so on. So yeah, the book is 120,000 words, and it's basically 15 years or so of my life and my journey. I never thought one day, I'll write a book using my suffering and pain and negative experiences to inspire people and to empower them. So it's now been published in 7 countries in 6 languages, which I'm really pleased about. And people have been reading it across the world. And my ultimate intention was to raise awareness, to inform people, to educate them about refugees and asylum seekers, and why do we have to flee our homes and our families and what we love, what we know, and because I saw the negative stigma and kind of some hatred and fear of refugees and migrants in society, especially post Brexit and Trump years. So yeah, I'm glad that I've been able to have the book as part of people could have a conversation and discussion about it. So I've been traveling across Britain and Europe. I've been to 20 countries. I've done about 350 talks at universities, colleges, and schools, just going around educating people, sharing my experiences, and hoping we could create a compassionate world where people show solidarity and kindness towards those who are fleeing for their lives and safety.
Thank you. And I think that because you write the story as being a young man, a 12-year-old boy making such a treacherous journey, I think that it allows people, certainly me, to really connect with that human aspect of that journey and that experience. And I think whenever we do hear about child refugees and the children, I do think it brings around a lot of public concern. And I do recognise that goes up and down in terms of people's input and actions. But I do think it was really important that you wrote that as from a 12-year-old boy's perspective in many ways. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the book, first of all, and your personal experiences, before we talk about the refugee situation in general, and then how, what we all can do to campaign and improve and to make it better. So first of all, just the title. The title of the book is The Lightless Sky. And it does come up in the book when you refer to in a sentence, you looked up at another lightless sky. First and foremost, I just wanted to ask, why was it that title that you chose to capture the essence of your experience?
So we had a few titles, few ideas, but for me, I wrote it with the help of a writer, a journalist, a wonderful lady called Nadine, and we had some ideas about titles. But then, I was keep telling her about how I used to wake up dark at night in the jungle, in forests, in prisons. There was a lot of darkness that year of my journey, about 12,000 miles back and forth, and experiencing a lot of inhumanity and cruelty. So darkness was the theme throughout. But The Lightless Sky came about because I think it's a quite ambiguous title. So some people, some people see it as a kind of a hopeful title. Some people see it as kind of, curious to see, what it's about. So yes, it's definitely because of my experiences of waking up to a lot of dark nights, but also the journey and the experiences as a whole was quite a dark experience. And also I checked on Twitter, hashtag The Lightless Sky. It was quite unique. So there wasn't anything, there was a lot of light in the distance. There was other things, but not specifically The Lightless Sky. So I wanted something unique and something special. And yeah, I'm glad we chose that. But in other countries, in other publication, the Italian call it I Follow the Stars. The French calls it I'm Gulwali. And the German, I think, says Sky Without Light. And so there's different titles. So not all the publishers and languages have the same title, but only in the US and the UK, I think we have the Lightless Sky.
Thank you. And I think that it's quite interesting, actually, how you talk of the lightless sky, and that's the title of your book. And of course, we're talking as Moonlight Trust here, and the moon does light up the sky. And I think that Noushin has often referred to her brother Moon, which was the reason that she founded this charity. She maybe talk about him a little later, and how, when the sun sets, the moon rises and lights up the sky. So I just felt that was quite a beautiful connection to your book and your story. So one of the things that strikes me about refugee crisis and the way that people refer to it, if they don't understand it, or the way that people refer to refugees, it's why people are coming to the UK or other parts of Europe. What's the reason? What are they trying to get from that? And I know when I read your book, you actually talk a very idyllic home life. You talk about tending sheep on a mountain brook. You talk about the pride in your father as a doctor, the time spent with your grandparents camping under the stars, and your mother's humming. So there was obviously a lot of beauty and love and light in your home life. So I want you to share so that people understand what would lead you to leave that situation, or should I say lead your mother, a caring mother, to at 12 years old send you away from that home life?
Yeah, that's a really important point. So, we have this mentality in the UK that why are people coming here? Why not Europe? And sadly, the reality is a lot of people stay in France, a lot of people stay in Germany, in other European countries, in Greece, in Italy, in Sweden. They have a lot more asylum applications than we do. New policies and hostility towards refugees, but they do a lot better than we do. My family was faced with my brother away because of the war and competition that we were faced with in the circumstances. I wanted readers to see that you don't.
You're muted. You're muted.
I think that we may have lost you there, Gulwali, just for a moment.
Yes, you have lost me. Sorry, my internet has been terrible.
No, don't worry, that's Zoom.
So as I was saying, people are faced with extraordinary circumstances to send. Yes. So yeah, people are sent because of situations which is not in their control. And I want people in the UK, majority of the people in Britain are quite nice and compassionate and welcoming, but there are some who think, oh, why don't people stay in France? Why do they come here from safer countries? Well, actually, claiming asylum is a human right. It's not a crime. And the international law does not say you have to stay in the first safe country. And a lot of people do stay in countries like Greece and Italy and other border states in Europe. And actually, they have a huge burden, a huge responsibility towards these refugees and people seeking asylum. Because we are the furthest, and we have this mentality people should not come here. And also, we have a law which says you have to be on the land to claim asylum. So, I came here because my brother was here, and also I was unwelcomed across half of the world, except Italy. So only a small number of people wants to come here. They have their reasons, and also we should be sharing this responsibility. We can't expect France and Germany and Italy and Sweden and others to take on the burden and responsibility, and we are unwilling. And also, actually, Britain has been caused most of these conflicts and wars, or have been participating in it. So this discussion makes me quite upset and angry when I see people, why don't people stay in France? Why do they have to leave a safe country? Well, you don't understand. France may be safe for you as a British tourist, but it might not be safe for a refugee living in the Kali jungle or living on the streets in Paris, living under bridges. Yes, France does a lot more than Britain, but there still needs to be room. There's still room for improvement, and I feel we need to look into ourselves and understand our moral and legal obligation towards people, seeking protection. So I want people to educate themselves and read the book, The Lightless Sky and other books and other stories, and connect with people. You were mentioning about human interaction. A lot of these people who are anti-refugees and anti-migrants, they have never met a refugee. They've never met a migrant. They have these, views, and they fear us. We're not to be feared. We're just normal human beings, ordinary people with hopes and aspirations. We just want to do the best for ourselves and our families. I have not seen my mom and my family for the last 14 years. If I have a choice, I don't want to be in this situation that I'm in. And so I hope people, realize that.
Well, I do hope that one day there's an opportunity for you to reunite. But talking about family, one of the earliest experiences that you had on your journey, right at the airport, right when you were setting off, was a terrible and surprising separation from your brother. As just a young boy, particularly as he was your older brother, I believe, by 2 years. I can imagine how difficult and challenging that must have been, and how terrifying. Would you say that the kind of drive, because I know you mentioned this throughout the book, would you say that the drive to be reunited with your brother gave you the hope and the strength to actually survive the journey that you experienced?
Correct. I think, yes, it was quite unfortunate that we were separated by the smugglers. I was upset about it, but then looking at hindsight now, I'm glad they separated us, because the journey made me, more determined to find him and to look for him. But also, maybe we would have been separated anyway at some point of the journey, because there were occasions where I was separated from my close friends and travel companions. It was more challenging, but then maybe if we were together, it would have been hard to see each other go through so much pain and suffering. So I feel, they did a smart thing to separate us. And I was very pleased to meet him a year later in the UK.
And so it was actually in the UK that you were reunited?
Wow.
Yes, correct. Yes. And that was one of my main reasons I came to Britain, because of my brother. And also I was unwelcomed in most of the countries that I went through. They actually imprisoned me and deported me in most cases, except Italy. As I was saying, Italy was a very positive experience. And if it wasn't for my brother, I would be speaking Italian now. They welcomed me, put me in a children's home, gave me cool clothes, food. I was safe and secure. It felt really strange because I was running for my life for about 10 months. And then here I was treated so compassionately and with so much care and humanity by the authorities, as well as by the care home staff in southern Italy.
That's really positive to hear about the experience in Italy, but of course you carried on so that you could be reunited with your brother. And I think that's something important that people need to understand about refugees, or why people choose to seek asylum in certain countries over others. Because of that family tie that people do often have. There is often a family connection in the UK.
Yeah, and also people have language connection, historical connection. And again, people should have a choice, where they want to go. And that's why the UN Convention on Refugees doesn't have anything in there to say that you have to claim asylum in certain countries. You can go wherever you want to go, and wherever you feel safe.
Yeah, thank you. And so you mentioned different experiences that you've had, and for everyone who's not read the book yet, we really highly recommend it. You can get it on Kindle, you can get it on hard copy. I also managed to find one audio book version. I wasn't sure of the best place, so we'll share all of the links of that as well. But one of the things that struck me as very strongly was the sort of police experience, the prison experiences that you had, and the criminalization of refugees on that journey, particularly a 12-year-old boy. I believe you were in prison in Bulgaria, Turkey, Iran, maybe, I think. So can you explain a little bit about how you feel about the sort of criminalization of refugees and how we can tackle that?
Exactly. So that's, again, an important point. Not only was I in prison in all these countries, including Greece and France on many occasions, you expect authorities to be there to give justice and treat you humanely, but they were the one who were oppressing us. And the smuggler were treating us as a commodity, and the authorities were being very cruel and oppressive towards us. And I think not only were we criminalized for seeking, protection, which was our human rights, but we were criminalized because it was somehow our fault. We were fleeing for our lives. I had a very bad experience in prisons in Turkey, in Iran, as well as Bulgaria, in Greece. Greece was somewhat better. It was still prison. Our freedom was taken away, and along the way, and also in the UK. I mean, in the UK, I was physically safe and welcome and protected, but mentally I was disturbed because the authority did not believe my age. They did not believe my nationality. In Britain, we have a system of disbelief when it comes to asylum seekers. We treat them as criminals, as suspects. And now, especially with this new immigration plan, which I'm sure we'll talk about, the government wants to make it even more restrictive and more hostile. So if I have come now, they will not even consider my asylum application, even though that 13 years ago, it took them 5 years to grant me refugee status. I went through a lot of challenges, and there was a lot of hostility and the hostile environment, as well as the bureaucracy. It took me 2 years to challenge the age dispute and the nationality dispute. They wanted to deport me, detain me. I don't know why they were deporting me, because they didn't believe I was from Afghanistan. So things sadly has not improved. So it's not just the bad treatment I faced in Bulgaria and Turkey and Iran. Actually, in the UK, we're one of the countries in Europe which we detain people indefinitely. We don't even have, we put people behind bars without being charged, and especially people who are fleeing violence, persecution, and injustices. And the least we should be doing is, treating them with compassion and kindness and showing solidarity. But we actually put them in detention for years and months without judge and jury. So yeah, we can't lecture other countries on human rights when we are doing things which is completely out of order and illogical, irrational, and actually illegal in some cases.
Absolutely. The UK is not innocent in this at all. And I know that we'll come back to Noushin shortly as well about some of the work actually that's taking place in the UK, or that should be taking place in the UK. But just to go back to that prison experience, because you do say in your book that there wasn't a day that went by that you didn't actually witness or experience the man's inhumanity to man. And having said that, when you were in prison, you also came across many people from different countries, different backgrounds, different careers, etc. And one person stands out in my mind because of the fact, the duality of people, because you mentioned this guy, Marion, and in your book, you talk about you at this time, you're a young boy still, and someone stole your money. And Marion, I think, was he from Congo?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
He was from the Congo, and what you say in your book is that he looked at you and he asked you what was wrong, because you were very upset about some money being stolen that your mother had given you, and you explained to him that, you know, your money had gone. And he said, in your book, you said he had the deepest, kindest eyes you had seen, but it turns out he had to beat someone up to get that money back for you. And as a young moralistic child, you had a lot of very deep, strong morals at that age. You thought he's now a bad man. So what I want to ask you is, do you still feel that on reflection? And in more generally speaking, what do you feel about the actions of people, like the duality of people put in very difficult situations in terms of doing bad things or being good or bad people?
I think that's quite philosophical. I mean, does the end justifies the mean? At the time, you know, I just wanted my money. Money was really important. The most important thing on the journey is money, because if you have money, you will be able to get food and clothes and kind of survive and, you know, make journeys and get a bus ticket. So I felt uncomfortable the way he did it, but I was happy that, you know, he got my money. And then later on, I found out he was not a nice man. You know, he have done some terrible things. But then again, I'm not a judge. I don't know. I haven't seen the things that he has done. So, you know, when I look at hindsight, I think sometimes you had to do things that, you know, sometimes you had to do things which might not be moral or ethical, but you got to do it to survive. So when you think about survivals, and on this journey, survivals and getting food and water and being alive was important. So yeah, I don't really ponder too much on it, but generally I'm quite a moral and ethical person. I will try to do what is morally right, and it's not always easy.
And I also want to comment on this because, you know, one of the things about Gulwali's story is amazing. The message that we try to give it to people, that refugees are not, you know, these people, spoon-fed people who come and take your job, who will not be able to integrate, because he's a perfect example. I mean, when I read his book, by the time he got to the age of 12, he'd seen Soviet invasion and their criminalization and brutality in Afghanistan, and then the hardcore Taliban, and then the Americans came, and he did not make the choice to leave Afghanistan. You know, I know we're talking about choices here. His mother paid the smuggler and got him and his brother out because they were being approached by you know, the government in Afghanistan and the Americans separately and Taliban separately, and they were asked to be informants of the security intelligence services, whatever they're called. And what was happening was that basically they had no choice. If they'd worked with Americans, you know, Taliban would have killed them. If they would have become informants of Taliban, Americans would have killed them. So by the time the Gulwali was 12, you know, I was just thinking, you know, I already hailed you as a hero. And then when you read the journey, that every border, how he has been persecuted, and having gone through so much, carrying so much trauma, you know, he's become an icon, an advocate, and a symbol of positivity and resilience in this country. That, you know, he's spoken on every TV channel, written a book, and he's been trying his best to integrate. So one of the arguments that people make is that, oh, you know, they're coming here, they can't integrate, they can't speak English, they'll take our jobs, you know, they'll take benefits. But this is a story that, you know, shows what a true, you know, what the true story is really. And that's Gulwali's story. I'm glad that you're telling it from your own mouth.
Actually, asylum seekers are not allowed to work, and they're not allowed to claim benefits. So there's just so much misinformation.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, and true stuff because of the media and because of right politicians. And that's why it's important to raise awareness and to educate people. You're absolutely right. I completely agree. And thanks for your kind words. And yeah, appreciate.
No, I think it's true important that we talk about diversity in a positive light, and we talk about refugees not as always as a crisis, because actually refugees, people like you, have contributed more to this country than people like Lord Dove see you as a heroic figure in the country. So we need these positive role models. And if Gulwali was declined his visa and he'd gone to Germany and Sweden, I mean, we would have lost on a hero, not on a refugee. So I'm not.
And a lot of actually, most refugees that I know, they have businesses. They actually not only take jobs, but actually create jobs and opportunities and pay their taxes, because they have seen things that we can't imagine, and they take every opportunity seriously. I mean, at my school, and I was the only person in my classes who got a C or above in my math, science, English. There were people born here, English was their first language. They didn't put the efforts and wasn't dedicated and committed enough. So for me, it was a chance and opportunity to actually do something in 2 years that they have not done in, let's say, 10 years. So it just shows you that when you give refugees the chance and the opportunity, the right help and support, they will overcome adversities and difficulties and challenges and achieve beyond that. I never imagined going to university, getting a degree, and then doing masters and writing a book. But most refugees like me actually have aspirations and wants to do well, and they're very driven. They're very full. They will not waste an opportunity like Malia Gebel and Duke would, because they have not seen what it feels like not to have these things in life.
Sarah, can you hear us now? Are you connected back? And also, Gulwali, you said some of the things like, when you came to UK, you were treated badly. And I know some of the, people I know in the community, like Sarah Mitchell's live right now, and she is leading on the migration and refugee support in Kirklees in our council. And what I normally see is that, they do give a lot of support to refugees, in terms of bringing them from the airport to putting milk in the fridge and everything. But and so at what point, I think for the people who don't know that what happens when you land here, and at what stage your life changes, and when is it that you are treated really badly? Is it by the police? Is it by the border forces? Is it by the so if you want to share some of that with us.
So basically, I was treated quite nicely by the people, border officers, police, and all officials and professionals. The people valued me, but the system did not. The system was such hostile and treated me as a suspect and criminal. Even though people were nice and kind to me, I had no issue with. So in Kent, the local authority did their best to support me and house me and give me clothes and food and money. But my issues were more than that, which was the system of disbelief. And they say I was not an Afghan national. The Home Office said the social services age assessed me and said, look, you can't be 13. You look 16 and a half, and you're too intelligent and smart to have traveled across half of the world. So yes, I mean, as I said, people were very nice to me. I had no issue with people, particularly officials. I had no issue with officials except the Home Office officials and the lady who did my age assessment, the social worker, and a few other people around the table. But the things changed for me when I got my refugee status back in 2013, 5 years later. The most important thing for a refugee is to have the legal status and the documentations and papers are important, because without it, you can't work, you can't go to university, you can't study, there is so much restriction on you. You can't travel. So with, having the right status, and that status took ages. I mean, I remember I was accepted into Manchester University to do a politics degree, but I didn't have my status. So they said I had to pay £13,000 to go to uni. And I said, well, if I had £13,000, I wouldn't be going to uni. And so, the really important thing is, of course, being welcoming and being caring. And I think it's good the local authority does their best. But, once you are age disputed, once you're not believed and the system treats you as a criminal, that is the problem. So I don't think people's are the issue. I think I had some really nice, later on, I had some really good social workers, youth workers, and people who helped and support me, mentored me, befriended me. My teachers played a big role in my lives in education. So the local authorities needs to do more in terms of when it comes to especially unaccompanied minors in their age assessment, because usually local authority will just want to make people over age so they don't have to be responsible for their like schooling and their accommodation, foster family and care homes and so on, because it costs. For example, now Kent is saying we're struggling, we can't take any more unaccompanied minors. So the Home Office is trying to get other local authorities to take them, but wouldn't fund it properly. So there are so many, these issues and challenges. But
absolutely.
my experience has been positive with people, but not with the system. And the issue I have is the system, not so much the people. And again, there are people who lacked awareness and were ill-equipped. They didn't have the necessary training to help and support people like me. So even though my experience was positive, but things has not improved, sadly. Things has got worse. But the most important thing for a refugee is their legal status. And again, integrations, everything else kind of comes later. Once you're able to, to plan ahead, once you're able to not to be scared of being arrested, detained, and deported, then you can, you can work on all sorts of things, learning the language. There's so many barriers and obstacles, but the most important one is not having that legal status. I have friends actually, in Bolton and Blackburn and other parts of the country who.
Okay. Technology is really not helping us today. Okay, I think Gulwali's internet has froze, and I'm just waiting that it will be, and Sarah's completely dropped as well. We don't know, it's just not the favorite day with the technology. Gulwali, can you hear us? Okay. Gulwali, can you hear us? Sorry, I know, and Sarah's completely stopped working. It's not a best technology day for so many people saying to me they can't log in.
It's so bad, it's so bad.
We'll send you a link, it's recorded. I'm getting messages, my phone's flooding, I can't get in, and I said this recorded.
Anyways, as I was saying about this family, sure, this family in Darwin, look, they've been here 8 years and they have a genuine asylum claim. One of their daughters has actually made it to university, but because she doesn't have status, she can't get a student finance and things like that. But there are some charities who are supporting them. But like 8 years, being in a legal limbo, they had a very successful life back home. She was a respected woman. She had she had a family and she had a life. But here she's depressed, and this lady and her two girls, they have anxiety, they have basically PTSD and other mental health challenges and issues because the Home Office have a system, they just don't believe them. So once the Home Office put your credibility and the question, there's very little you could do. And now they want to make it even more harder with this new immigration plan and wants to blame lawyers and advocates and campaigners for doing, for standing up and making their voices heard.
And do you think the government is, obviously we know all of this is very unethical and not true reflective of the real, British values, because we are welcoming people and we embrace diversity and, we believe that we thrive together. But do you believe that government is investing resources in making the environment more hostile for refugees rather than investing those resources, in terms of developing the refugees, because that would be a positive and the right thing in the right direction? And what do you think is making the government, not go in that direction? So what is your view on this?
Most definitely. So the government has been doing everything it could to create hostility and make, people across the English channels, because we don't have safe and legal routes. We don't have ways where people could actually go and claim asylum in a third country for Britain. People can't walk into a British embassy and ask for a visa or humanitarian visa to come here. So the government has been, this hostile environment for years has not worked, but they continue to invest money. We pay, French authorities and police in northern France, in Calais, in Dunkirk, to the French police then goes and harass refugees.
Okay, I think the internet's it's not great today for so many people.
And burn their tents to try to prevent them from coming to the UK. So I feel like if this thing was spent and they're heading a certain sons to, that there's a small minority in Britain, or sizable minority, who just thinks they want to blame all their problems on refugees and migrants, when actually refugees and migrants contribute more than they take out from the system.
Absolutely. And also, with France, especially the situation with France now, I've noticed, because we help, with some of the partners on the ground. And what I've also been told is that police attacks in France on the refugees have become more vicious. That's why refugees are taking this dangerous journey. And, a year ago, a boat was drowned, a family that drowned, they had a little baby. This baby, I had seen videos of him on my Facebook, because I have refugees who are friends with me on Facebook. And he was, they always used to pictures of him. He was a little hero and limelight of this camp, and it was his family and the baby who drowned. And one of the reasons that we were told when we spoke to refugees, that why refugees in France are taking such dangerous routes, and they said it's because the police attacks are vicious. They come and take our things. And also I think you have to bear in mind that hate crime and Islamophobia has also played a part, and it's become hardened for refugees. Like I said, it's easier to blame your problem on somebody else, and some politicians have built their campaigns on the back of the migrant and refugee crisis, if you saw prior to Brexit. So one of the things that people need to do is that they need to research for themselves, and they need to speak to refugees themselves. So if you've got people like in your town, it's better for you to speak to them about their journey than at times getting, the sensational headlines from the media. And that's one of the things that I think we all can do, is learn for ourselves and connect and be friends. I don't know what Gulwali's view is on this, but that's why I always say to people that learn from them.
Completely, yes, indeed. I think, befriending, budding refugees, meeting them, getting to know them, and hearing their stories and their struggles and experiences, having that human interaction helps. As I was saying earlier, a lot of people who have this negative views of refugees have never met a refugee. We're just normal human beings. We all want the best for ourselves and our families. If I have a choice, I want to be with my loved ones. And so most of these, and again, like sometimes the Home Office uses language where they say, asylum seekers and foreign criminals are kind of the same thing, when they're not. Like they would say, they would put a tweet out saying, oh, we deported certain asylum seekers and foreign criminals. They're associated. So the hatred and fear has been created in parts by policies and by, the right-wing agenda in government and politicians. It just doesn't make sense. Like, if you're an asylum seeker, you're seeking asylum, which is your human rights. We are part of this global system, the UN Convention. Britain was behind the UN Convention on Refugees, but now it doesn't like it because people are using it. So I feel definitely just talk to people, get to know people, and then we're less than 1% of our population are refugees. Last year every year there has been a decrease in asylum applications, but the Home Office saying, oh, we are overwhelmed, this crisis. Well, it's a crisis of incompetence. Decisions are taking over more than 6 months. Decisions are taking years. It's not the fault of refugees, it's the fault of the Home Office. And actually, over 60% people usually get refugee status. And some of them then goes on and get their status in courts through the justice system. So that means, around 70-80% people who come here are genuine refugees according to the Home Office own system. But then, now they want to make it harder, saying, if you come here through safer and legal, safer countries, we will not even consider your asylum claim, which goes against international law, humanitarian laws, and so on. And the UNHCR has been very clear with the UK saying, this is not okay. This is not the way how it should be. You should be improving and, improving the standards and making progress towards a more better and humane and a better system, not actually reducing and making it difficult and putting people in more danger and by taking these risky journeys and by putting them in the hands of smugglers and traffickers. So things, again, that's concerning for me, that things has not improved in the last 13 or 14 years I have been here.
And also things are getting worse now, but if you follow the current policies, like we had a chat about, how they're criminalizing people who steer the boat. I don't know if you were talking about something that do you want to highlight some of those?
Yeah, sure. So recently there was some Iranian asylum seekers, and they were in the sea, and their boat got into trouble, and he was steering the boat trying to get to safety. And the Home Office persecuted him, saying you're a smuggler. And then actually later on the court found he was an innocent guy. But it's just like asylum seekers are criminalized for saving their lives and trying to steer a boat. Like smuggler wouldn't put themselves in that situation. Obviously, that's quite obvious. But it's just like, it's kind of it's very worrying to see how the Home Office is going after people who are innocent people who are risking their lives for safety and protection, and who have every right to do so. But then they want to find ways to blame them and wants to find ways to put them in prison and detain them and treat them inhumanely. They want to do everything they can to deter people, but that's just a wrong assumption. People come here because they have no choice, and people come here for a lot of good reasons. And I feel like Britain needs to play its fair share and take its responsibility and a role seriously. We need to do more on this humanitarian front. We need to work. I mean, we had the G7 summit. There was nothing about displacement and refugees, and we have 80 million displaced people in the world. We have, about 30 million are refugees. Conflicts in Syria and Afghanistan are only getting worse. Iraq and Eritrea and South Sudan, and the situation in Burma with the Rohingyas, and they're struggling in Bangladesh. The situation with Uyghur Muslims in China. There's so much injustice happening in the world, and I think Western countries are not doing enough to respond to these challenges.
Absolutely agreed. Sarah, would you like to? You're muted. Sarah, you're muted. So
I'll come back in. I'll come back in. So first of all, apologies so much, but I keep getting kicked out on the internet. I'm not sure why. So thank you so much. I caught the back end of what you were just sharing then about the way that the UK need to improve, and the way that we all need to engage and connect with refugees so that we better understand people's individual stories. I'm going to come back to the writing of the book before we look at some of the future things that we need to consider and how we can all do more and do better to help. In terms of writing the book, you said that someone in America told you that it's a wonderful story and maybe you should write a book. But as being such a young person, going through such an incredible number of traumatic experiences, I imagine that whilst cathartic, it may have been quite an intense and challenging process to write that book. So can you just share a little bit about how you approached the writing of your story and kind of how you needed to overcome some of those experiences or kind of deal with them on an emotional level in order to write the book?
I wish I didn't have to write it. I wish I didn't have to go through the experience that I went through, but I'm glad we had the opportunity to put my words on paper and to take action. So emotionally and mentally, it was very challenging because I wanted to forget these things that happened to me. I wanted to move on. And that's what a lot of asylum seekers and refugees want to do. They want to move on and forget about the negative experience of their lives. I mean, I still have nightmares. I still have, I've been traumatized by what I've seen growing up in a war zone and, fleeing for my life and hiding at night from rocket attacks and bombardments. All these things come back to me, enhance me. But with writing the book, the more I was talking to Nadine, who was helping me write the book, the more things came to my mind. We were supposed to write 75,000 words. We wrote 110,000 words. So yes, emotionally and mentally, as well as physically, it was very challenging because at the time I was doing my final university degree and I was doing my dissertation. I sadly, one of my little sister passed away back home. Things was not great. So I was very disturbed anyway, but then going through the stories made things worse in so many ways. But I always had this in mind that, this will make a difference. I recently saw a tweet from a friend who used to work with the Amnesty International and as well as the Afghanistan Human Rights Commission. And she was saying that a lot of people have not met Gulwali, but his campaigning and advocacy work has changed their lives. She was referring to refugees. And that was kind of my mission in life, that there are people that would never meet me, but I want to improve their lives. I want to make things better for them. I want the system to be more humane. And I want the system to treat people, as individuals, not some sort of statistics and numbers. And I hope I have succeeded in that somewhat. I've been trying to work with policymakers and decision makers, with parliamentarians to bring about a system where, if you're going to refuse someone, not give them status, let's do it. I mean, it's wrong, but let's do it in a humane, in the most kindest way possible. Don't wake up people at 5 o'clock in the morning and handcuff them and put them in detention center and forcibly remove them. That's not the way. So yeah, I've been doing what I could, trying to be useful, but the book certainly has helped me and given me that kind of, platform and voice. The book has given me a lot more credibility. Which the Home Office then wanted me to have credibility, but yeah, the book certainly has provided me with an important platform and voice where I can make a difference and have an impact.
Thank you, and we do thank you, appreciate you, and are inspired by the work and deep work that you've had to do to create that book and the mission that you've had in doing so. And I do believe it's helped already many people and will help many more to come, and as will your talks and as will the ongoing work that you do. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the present situation and the future. At the moment, we're under a Tory government. We have been experiencing the refugee crisis, certainly in the UK, and the way we treat refugees has continued to deteriorate under the Tory government and under the current austerity. What is it that we can individually do to help tackle and campaign that for refugees, for asylum seekers? Not just through charity work, but actually through tackling some of those policies and some of the bills that are likely to be passed in near time.
Yeah, so as individuals, sometimes we feel overwhelmed, we feel powerless, hopeless, and helpless when we see things in the news, people drowning and people dying in the situation that we have. I feel like we could do things. Of course, we need the government to be accountable, and we need MPs and Parliament to pass on laws that are humane and that makes things better and fairer for refugees. So the things that I encourage people to do, if you have time, please, volunteer for refugee charity, go to Greece, go to Calais. If you don't have time, give to charities, Care for Calais, Moonlight Trust. There are a lot of other charities who are working on the ground in Greece and Calais, as well as other places in the world. So donation, giving, befriending refugees, mentoring refugees, bringing, if you have the time to mentor refugees, because people are isolated, especially, in northern towns in the UK where it's cheap to house them. So asylum seekers are sent to places where it's very, it's not very nice, and they need, friends and people to help and support them. And I would say, writing to MPs. So if people go on, like, for example, the End Detention Forum website, the Refugee Action, Asylum Matters, there are like 4 campaigns at the moment, lifting the ban, allowing asylum seekers to work. There's a one on Family Together by Red Cross and other organizations. Ending detention is an important one, having a limit on detention. There's the Together with Refugees, about 5-6 campaigns that are happening currently by this big and important refugee organization and charities. So people can go and these Refugee Action, Refugee Council, UNHCR websites. There are already template written letters. All you have to do is to send it to your MP. That helps. And there's usually petition going around and making things better and having a more humane and fair system. So yeah, sending this petition, being aware. So the Joint Council of Welfare of Migrants, JCWF, whatever that is, the Joint Council of Welfare of Migrants, they usually have a lot of petitions. Yeah, they're really great. And Refugee Rights Europe. So there's some really good organizations to follow on social media. Safe Passage, been campaigning to bring people here, children safely from Europe. So doing these kind of things makes a difference. Going on protests and demonstration, hopefully reading stories like mine. All these things help us to be better educated and aware, as well as we should play our part. We have the capabilities and abilities as people to make a difference and have an impact on people. So every little helps, in my view. So we may not be able to help the 80 million people, the 30 million refugees, but we can help someone. I am where I am because of the help and support I receive from individuals, from teachers, from youth workers, from people who befriended me, people who mentored me, people who still support me. So I think, these things we should not underestimate and not take for granted. And I hope it helps.
Thank you. And you gave a great list of things there. And just to summarize, and then I'm going to go over to Noushin, who's obviously working day to day in a refugee charity. But to summarize, there's a whole spectrum from picking up the book and reading it, and reading articles and trying to educate yourself, right through to kind of political protest and campaign work and everything in between. So just a reminder that we will share on our Facebook page throughout the week of Refugee Awareness Week, we'll share petitions, links to campaigns, links to where the pre-written letters are, as you mentioned, the link to the book and the ways that you can donate and get involved through other organisations. I saw in the chat that Sally has just messaged in to say there's a Care for Calais West Yorkshire group that also helps people whilst here in the UK. And I think it's so important to recognise that because that journey is so long, you do need support and mentors and guidance all along that journey. And I do remember in your book you mentioned when you arrived in Greece the first time, there was a lady there who probably for the first time in many weeks, many months at that time, she gave you a lot of kindness. She helped you with some food, and you sort of said in your delirium, you thought she was an angel. I think that's important to say that every little piece of work that we all do to support somebody, it can be very beneficial long term.
Yes, I also want to add on to this, don't undermine any little activity that you may want to,
Sarah does some good work. Sarah, I'm going to have to apologize and leave.
Okay.
Sorry, Noushin.
Okay, it's been really bad in terms of technical glitches.
We've had a number of technical issues, haven't we?
Okay, what we can do is if people have questions, we can take them, Gulwali, and we can send them to you, and we can share the answer on social media, if that helps. No, his internet's not working.
Thank you so much, Gulwali. No problem. We're recording, so we will create some content and share it out for people, and we can get together again. Thank you so much, Gulwali. Thank you for joining us. So we'll just stay on a little bit longer.
Coming up, and I wish you well. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to listening to the conversation later on. I have another event and others I would have stayed on. Thank you guys, wishing you well, stay safe.
No worries, you take care, and thank you for all your amazing work that you do. Okay.
So myself and Gulwali seem to have been suffering the same technical issues. I'm not sure why. So what we'll do, for those of that are on the meeting at the moment, we also were hoping to do a live stream and we had issues with that before we get started. So what we'll do is we'll take some of the content that we've recorded from this video and we'll share it out on social media along with links and information that people can use as well. But now that Gulwali unfortunately has not been able to stay around, let me pass over to Noushin, who's a wonderful friend of mine, the founder of the Moonlight Trust charity, a wonderful organisation, an organisation I'm very, very proud to be a part of. And I'd just like to ask you a question, and then I can see we might have a couple of hands raised. Please do take the opportunity to ask Noushin questions. She has a wealth of knowledge on this as well. So I just want to ask you kind of where is Moonlight Trust right now in terms of the work that we're doing? What countries and what particular projects are you focused on right now?
Well, as you know, like I said, 50 to 60% of work is to do with refugees. And unfortunately, we would like these issues to be reduced. But as you know, by the time we finish this talk, there'll be few more people displaced just within this hour. So the refugee crisis is one of the biggest catastrophe since World War II. That's how I see it. And what happens is every time there's another issue like war in Syria or a pandemic, that, you know, the spotlight gets taken off refugee crisis. So right now, because we've been going through the pandemic, the refugee crisis has still now been shoved to the back of the cupboard. But refugees are still there, you know, their needs are still there. If nothing else, their needs are worse. So I'll give you just one example of one of the camps, that Moria camp in Lesbos, and in the Greek island of Lesbos, one of the biggest camp where we have been helping for the last few years. You know, there is no social distance when it comes to pandemic, and there is no, you know, what we have here is a privilege to be able to just sit at our home or do social distance or wear masks, because there's one toilet for, I don't know, 50 people, you know, there's one tap for 60 people, and the camps are overcrowded. And I'm talking about the camps in Europe, not the ones in, you know, Rohingya or Bangladesh. I mean, they are probably even worse, but I'm talking about the camps in Greece, in France. So unfortunately, the refugee situation is getting worse, and as Gulwali has said, that, you know, the government policies are now or even being more hardline. So we want to intensify our support for the people, you know, refugees, our brothers and sisters in need. You know, most of refugees tell me they don't like to be called refugees, and they're being reduced to numbers. And, you know, Gulwali is one story, you know, so what we need to do is share more stories between us, between our friends and families. So what we are doing still is providing the essential emergency aid on ground in Serbia and Bosnia, which is one of the worst country when I looked into where they were treated to. So this year we decided to also support refugees in camps in Bosnia, in Greece, in France, you know, and Afghan refugees in Pakistan. There is over 600,000 refugee in camps in Pakistan as well. So apart from supplying baby milk, nappies, food, clothing, you know, all the emergency needs, as well as now, because people have been in the camps for years now, sometime, and, you know, the kids who were born, when I go back, some, you know, it's 4 or 3 and they're walking. So what we're trying to do is help with English classes, invest more in sustainable integration and projects where we're also giving them skills as well, so they get the confidence and the support. Every time I am in camps, you know, we talk about, like, you know, how much trauma has Gulwali on his own. We talk about the traumas, but there is no luxury to give them counseling or mental health support. And the least we do is give the mental health support and counseling to volunteers. So at least, you know, if volunteers leave, all the infrastructure will collapse. As you know, majority of this work is done by Moonlight Trust. And, you know, there's other organizations doing this, but particularly in Moonlight Trust, we have 1.5 paid member of staff, and all the work is done by amazing volunteers. And, you know, Sarah is one. And if it wasn't people like you, whoever's listening to this talk, you know, whether you're doing social media or whether you're fundraising or whether you're organizing an event, you know, you literally are helping us intensify our support. And that's something that I would ask everyone, please, you know, go on the website, you know, if you can donate. If you can't donate, please volunteer. You know, if you can't volunteer, raise awareness between your family and friends. There is so much you can do.
Thank you, Noushin. Thank you so much. I can see Sally's got a hand up, and I will come over to Sally one moment. I just want to sort of reinforce something there. One of the things, I mean, I've known you a long time, Noushin. I've always known your hard work and dedication that goes into this. One of the things I didn't realize until I was involved with Moonlight Trust personally was that 100% of any penny raised goes directly to the cause. That is to say, there are no paid staff, and all the paid work that does come happens through funded roles and through funded projects, not through anything to do with the donations. And that's quite unique in the scale that you're operating at.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to go over to Sally Kincaid now, who has her hand raised for a question.
Hi, Sally.
I'm just in my breaks. I'm sort of multitasking between work and listening to what's going on. I always find Gulwali completely and utterly inspirational. I read his book before I met him, and then I read his book after I met him a second time. And it's just, and he's done a lot of work examining the national education, and he's done a lot of work with us in terms of developing materials to be used in schools for raising awareness of the refugees and what's happening, etc. There is an excellent book which I sent to Sarah's young person, which is called The Boy at the Back of the Class, which in terms of books for younger children, it's a very, very good book, sort of key stage 2, etc. But I do want to say something else just quickly. It's very interesting, isn't it? When the pandemic started, right, Liverpool said we need more medical staff, and they looked at the people who are in the hotels, i.e. the refugees, the asylum seekers, and said, any of you got any medical experience? And the people said yes. So what they did, they fast-tracked them through the Home Office procedure and had them working in the hospitals where they were needed. And this is a stupidity of the situation. We know there are refugees with amazing skills who are not allowed to work. We have a country where we've lost lots of workers because they've gone back to Europe, etc. We've got a crisis going on, and yet the government's racism will not allow it to happen. And the final thing I want to say, because I did put something in the chat, he's bigger now, but we did take in a young lad called Hussein about 5 years ago. We went through the process of, he'd been in Dunkirk for 10 months, arrived in Leeds for whatever reason on the back of a lorry, and we got to know him, and we went through the fostering process, and the training we got was excellent. And can I say, he when Gulwali says about refugees, he brought more to our house than we could possibly ever give him. He's now finished college. There's been a program on Radio 4 about his journey, so if you look up Hussein Ahmadi, Radio 4. But the most important thing for us was when he had to go through this battle with the Home Office, and it was a horrible, he lost his, right. They told him to jog on the first time round, and we had to go to an appeal. And it was a youngsters at Leeds City College who basically helped that young man. They launched a petition, they had a demonstration. Two coach loads turned up at the court on the appeal day with our friend Hussein Mustay, and it was people who signed the petition, etc., that made the Home Office Hussein won his appeal on the same day. Now that very, very rarely happens. Most youngsters have to wait 2 or 3 weeks in order. So that thing about what little you can do, even if it's just signing a petition, it makes a massive, massive difference. So I'm going to have to go back to work. My phone is about to go. But thank you so much for.
But thank you for being who you are. Thank you for being showing compassion and kindness towards refugees. Thank you. You're muted, Sarah. You're muted.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you so much. So I did have a couple more questions for Gulwali. So what we're going to do, seeing as we had various tech issues, is I'll take some of the content from today, but I'll also continue to chat to Gulwali and ask him some questions. So if anyone does have any questions that they want to send into the chat or via Facebook or Messenger, we'll continue to talk to him, and we'll continue to share things all throughout Refugee Awareness Week. But if anyone has any questions right now, then Noushin is a fountain of knowledge when it comes to yes, you are. When it comes to refugees, when it comes to the awareness on the ground in the UK, not only from a charity perspective, but also from a policy perspective as well. So please do send on your questions. So this week, all week is Refugee Awareness Week. So even if you can do a small task every single day, signing a petition, sending a letter, sharing a post, then even if you can't donate or volunteer, then those things are incredibly valuable. It's 2:05, and we've lost Gulwali, so I think it's a good time to wrap up now. But please do, if you're not following the page, follow the page so you'll get the rest of this content throughout the week.
Yes, and follow us on social media as well. You know, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That's where we'll be sharing this. And, you know, want to finish it on positive note, because when people ask me what is the hope for refugee crisis and what is the hope for the despair that, you know, is in the world right now with so many crises, whether it's climate change or what I'm saying is, you know, our youth and our you know, compassion and hope, the volunteers that have been helping in the most difficult times when they have not had money for themselves, they have been cutting back and sleeping on couches and cooking and cleaning for refugees, signing petitions like Sally said. So you know, that is something that we can all hold on to, and Moonlight Trust is another example. You know, 90% of the work is done by volunteers, so please keep doing this, and please keep supporting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Unless anyone's got any questions, we'll close the call now. But keep a look on the page, because we had so many tech issues today. I'm sure we're going to do something else throughout the week just to make sure that we're making the very most of Refugee Awareness Week.
And, you know, you can ask us a question later on. If you don't have something particular in mind now and something jumps up, just send us the questions via social media, via email, you know, and then we can also pass them on to Gulwali and ask him to answer if you've got any particular questions.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much for joining
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you. Just us.
Shall I stop recording? One second.
Yes, stop recording.